We're starting off the new year strong with some really awesome reads from January, so let's talk about them. Hello, book friends. It's Alyssa. Welcome back to the channel. Hello, if you are new. I am here to do the obligatory monthly wrap up. I got behind last year, but hopefully we don't do that this year. It's a new year. It's a new-ish me. Let's make sure we stay on top of it this year. Let's talk about everything I read in January. I really enjoyed the books I read last month. I've done a couple standalone reviews for them. So you've seen those already, but overall, I think I had a really good reading month. I have a few books to talk about for the month, so let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into it. I'm tired. It's daylight. I'm tired. So let's hop in as usual with my stats. I read 13 books in the month of January, which came out to 4,768 pages. My moods mostly the same as normal, but I think we got a new contender for the year. I don't know if this is going to continue as a trend, but we'll see. So it's emotional, reflective, and adventurous. Mysterious, dark, and sad are at the bottom. Okay, this is New Year, who is she? I don't know who this is, but we're here for it. My pace is the same, medium, slow. Nothing is fast-paced this month, but that's okay. I was happy anyway. Page numbers, most of the books were, as usual, between 300 and 400, 500 pages. A couple big chunky ones over 5, but not many. I did read a little bit of nonfiction, not a ton, but there was a little bit in there. I've been really interested in reading a little bit more nonfiction, so I think we're going to see a little bit more as these couple months go by. I think I'm in like a little bit of a groove, so watch that number creep up a little bit. And then here's something that I think is really interesting for the month is that right at the top of the year, literary and fantasy are tied and for top genres. And that is not normally how I go. It's usually more literary than fantasy. So it will be interesting to see over the course of the year how those two line up. Is this going to be a fantasy year? Is this going to be a literary year? Let's see. It's early days, you know? Then, of course, we have queer lit and then romance and art. Weirdly, all the ones under romance are kind of tied for whatever that place is. 5th place? I don't know. My average star rating for the month was 3.77 stars. And pretty much everything I read in the month of January was a book that I owned. There was only one book that I read in the month of January that I didn't own. So I'm doing a really good job of reading things that I already had on my shelves, and I really do hope that that continues. I'm going to tee up my book lead per usual. I'm going to scoot to the side so there's space for me to stick it. We're going to start right off with a nonfiction, and that is Madame Restell by Jennifer Wright. I did film a review for this, and I don't know if I really liked it, so I might not post it. I might post it. I'm not sure. But this is about this woman, Madame Restell. She was a midwife, abortionist woman in the mid-1800s who was in New York City, made a lot of money, became very wealthy, and it's a story of her life and how abortion rights and women's health and access to birth control has changed in this country from, basically, the late 1700s through Madame Restell's life, and then obviously reflecting on what has been happening today with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, etc. So it's a really interesting read. It's a very powerful read. It was really interesting to see how much stricter things got over time, how Madame Restell, even though she's not actually a very likable person, how she was a very astute businesswoman, and how she amassed like a really great wealth and actually had really good track record with her patients, unlike a lot of other midwives and people doing similar stuff at the time in New York. So she didn't really kill anybody. Her treatments were much more either like benign or just actually helped. She also did a lot of really terrible things too. And the ending's kind of a little bit wild, the ending of her life, coming in of all these Comstock laws and things getting stricter and all these morality laws and all this stuff in New York. There's this question around whether or not she took her own life or did she fake her own death and escape to Europe to avoid being put in jail for yet another, another time in jail, because she went to jail a bunch of times. Yeah, it was really interesting. I did enjoy this. I have had this on my list for a really long time. Hachette sent it to me when it came out, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I finally got to it. Body Grimmer by Jules Omim. This is about 3 young women in the Pacific Northwest, and they're kind of coming of age. They're coming to not terms with their sexuality as much as coming to terms with their sexual attractions to each other, to the things that they want, to who they are, to their bodies, to just a lot of things that happen sort of in your early 20s and that or late teens, and you're going from high school to college. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really nice look at that age and the things that you can struggle with at that time. It also deals a lot with like grief and the loss of a peer and stuff like that. So this was nice. I liked this one. Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino. This was okay. So I've seen a lot of buzz about Beautyland around on the good old bookish internet, and I did sort of enjoy myself while I was reading it. So this is about this girl who's born thinking that basically she's an alien. She's very much coded as being autistic in the book. It's all told through her perspective, so she very much believes that she is an alien and that she communicates through this fax machine with other aliens and that she's here for some mission. And you see her grow up from like the late 70s, 80s, 90s, and these faxes that she keeps sending, and they're all really funny, quirky reflections on the world around her. And you see her dealing with growing up, with interacting with other people, with trying to navigate relationships. She does also seem to be coded as being asexual, and I thought some of this was really lovely. I liked the perspective. I liked some of the humor in it, but I don't know if I liked the entire book all like overall. I think there's just something kind of lacking from it as an entire package, but there's definitely pieces of this that I really enjoyed. So I think I see why some people really liked it, but I had a good time with it. It was an easy read. It made me laugh at times, heartbreaking at times. I did love the relationship between her and her mother. I feel like she could say almost anything to her mom. She grew up in a single, with a single mom. And I feel like she could say almost anything, and the mother was quite supportive, which was nice. Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know. We'll see how this one plays. I'm very interested to see how I feel about this book in a couple months. Like, is it going to stay with me, or am I just going to completely forget this? Two Cities by Cynthia Zarin is kind of a travel memoir of sorts. So Cynthia Zarin is writing reflections on Venice and Rome, which are 2 cities that she knows very well. She's been to many times, but this time she has returned to both these places alone without the person that she has been there with before. You have her interacting with a well-known place in different ways, and she's exploring the romantic losses that she's experiencing, but also exploring her new interactions and relationship with places that she knows really well. It's very short. It's just 2 short, almost essays, and I really enjoyed this. I thought the essay on Venice was very interesting. It made Venice feel so otherworldly and almost like anything could happen in Venice because Venice isn't real. And then Rome was just a very interesting look at a place very deeply embedded in history and how that history is reflected in like the ghosts of the people, of the person she used to be with, and that relationship and their time in that city. I thought it was a really interesting reflection on like lost love and place, and I really enjoyed it. And this was a recommendation I found from, there's an ASMR artist that I really enjoy, and she does some really great book content as well. Her name is Mauve ASMR, and I found this from her. So I always watch whenever she talks about books, because she always has something interesting that I haven't seen around in the bookish space, and I'm keen to get my hands on. And this was one of them, and I really did enjoy this. This is one of the first books I read this month. These are a bit out of order. The God of Endings by Jacqueline Holland. This is a spin on a lot of the vampire tropes, vampire lore, and I really enjoyed this. I've talked about this on the podcast as well. I thought this was brilliantly done. It really talks to this idea of, if you live forever, how do you handle relationships? Do you have relationships with other people? I also love long sweeping narratives about somebody who lives for a long period of time, because you get to see the world change through their eyes, which is always an interesting and fun exercise in a book. I really enjoyed this. I believe this is her debut, and I'd be very interested in seeing what she writes next, because this was just such a good time. Really enjoyed this. Can I say that any more times? How many times can I say I enjoy this? It was good. I'm glad I found this in a charity shop. To Wear a Demon Crown is the third and final book in this romantasy trilogy that I had been reading at the end of the year. It's called King and Coven. I really loved this. I thought this whole little trilogy was just wonderfully done. It's written by Madeline Elliott. It's self-pubbed. And I just thought it was a nice, fun, almost cozy, right amount of smut, right amount of like tension and politics and like and fantasy stuff in it too. It was a good time if you're looking for just something nice to read, if you like sort of romance, fantasy, that kind of stuff, and you just want something like you're going on vacation. I think this King and Coven trilogy, I think it's good. I think it's fun. It's a good time. There's witches, there's demons, there's humans involved in this too. There's like people that can shift into different things. There's people that like drink blood. There's tension and battles and politics and smexy time and fated mates, and I just loved it. I thought it was great. Paradise Rot by Jenny Haval. This was the first book I read it for the year. Well, I got this for Christmas from one of my friends. I really wanted to read this because my co-host for the podcast loves this book. She found it very disturbing and wanted to know my thoughts on it. And it is a very visceral book. It is very much a book about exploring relationships and obsession and sexuality, and again sort of this in between part of your life where you're like not quite a full adult, but you're not in like high school, you're not a child anymore, you know, you're off on your own, you're going to college, that kind of stuff. And these like obsessive relationships you can have. Our main characters in this apartment, they like live in this like kind of other world of obsession and desire in this apartment that is going to neglect, and it is definitely really interesting. And I want to read her other book with like the girl who's floating. I can never remember the name of it. I'll insert it somewhere here, but I really want to read her other book to see how I get on with that one. I think I might like that one. The Sea at the End of Everything by Emily McCosh is like a little novella that she published this year that has just like really a nice atmosphere. It's a story about set on in a seaside town that's kind of remote, and this human question mark gets washed up on shore. That human question mark ends up bringing together sisters that are kind of estranged after one sister goes into the sea and then doesn't come back for a while and finally returns, and she returns different. So there's this kind of mental health discussion. There's like the sister bond. There's this element of fantasy with this human question mark that comes out of the sea. And I love her writing. I love the atmosphere, the tone. It felt very Cornwall-esque. And I really love Emily McCosh. She's an indie author that I really, truly do enjoy. And she does all the artwork, and her books are beautiful inside and out. The Salt Black Tree by Lilith St. Croix is the second in a duology. I think it's like the Arcane Gods or something like that. I didn't really like this. I don't know if it's Lilith St. Croix's writing. Maybe I just don't jive with the way she writes. It just felt like it was almost there the entire time. There was like almost this kind of villain, morally gray character, female MC romance that was brewing, but not quite. There was a whole weird thing about like how these gods, demons can travel around the US, and they're like driving in cars and they can go like kind of on hyper speed from like California to, I don't know, Kentucky. Like they can move real fast. It's got Baba Yaga in it. There's like a bad mom. There's a lot happening, but somehow not enough for me. And again, I think it might be something to do with Lilith St. Croix's writing. I don't know. Maybe we just don't jive, but then also maybe just this series isn't for me. So I haven't totally written off Lilith St. Croix yet, but unfortunately these two did not work for me, but I did finally finish up the duology. I have a review for this on the channel. I did read Evelyn Waugh's Brideshead Revisited. I did really enjoy this. I thought it was a really interesting snapshot of a period of time, and I did love how it, at least like the beginning that sets up the framework for Saltburn. I do really love Saltburn. I will be reading The Talented Mr. Ripley soon because I know that people are making a lot of comparisons to Saltburn, or they're at least seeing it when they're watching Saltburn. They're like, these are the influences, Brideshead and The Talented Mr. Ripley. So I will be reading that, but Brideshead, read it, loved it. I did read my first Robin Hobb finally, so everybody cheer. I finally did it. I only said I was going to do it last year, but I did it, okay? So I read The Assassin's Apprentice. It's the first in the Farseer trilogy. It's the first in her whole world of the realm of the and I have it written down. Realm of the Enderlings. Elderlings. I want to say Ender. Realm of the Elderlings. It's the first trilogy, first book in the first trilogy of that giant fantasy world. And I really enjoyed it. I like Fitz. I like the writing. I did not like all of the trauma that happens to dogs in this. But I did really enjoy this. I can kind of see why people like Hobb. I can also kind of see why people complain that Fitz is annoying, because I have started the second book in this in February, and I can kind of see why people think that Fitz like whines a lot. But I don't so far dislike the whining, but I can see why people find him whiny. Possession, a Romance by A.S. Byatt. I did really love this. There is a separate review for this on the channel, so I'm not going to go too far into this. Beautiful writing, expertly crafted. I see why it won a Booker Prize. It is, and I've been having this moment of really being nostalgic for like a slower period of time, like the 80s and 90s, before we had so much internet and so much interconnectedness and so much of all of this. And like Possession and Beautyland and a few other books have really been hitting home to me how much I kind of miss that slower time. And this is definitely one of those. It really made me nostalgic for some things, but yes, love this. And then finally, I read Miss Iceland, which I can't even begin to say this, but it's like Audr Eva Olafsdottir.
Oidr Ava Olafsdottir.
Oh God, Icelandic names in me. Whew. So this is an Icelandic author, translated from the Icelandic. This is the last book we were to read for TBR Lowdown, so we will be doing a separate live for this. There will be more discussion on this, but this is about a woman who arrives in Reykjavik from an outer city or an outer town, and she is a writer, and she is trying to like make her name as a poet in Iceland in the 60s or 70s. It's not a time where there's a lot of like women's liberation. Women are really second-class citizens still. There's a lot of boys clubness about the writers and the poets in these coffee shops and things. And it's really about her struggles, but it's also about her relationship with one of her best friends who is gay, and the struggles that he goes through to exist in a time where homophobia is just awful and the things that get done to him are terrible. There's a lot of trauma that happens to him, and the two of them sort of have each other in a really beautiful way and take care of each other. And I really loved this. I thought this was beautiful, and I would love to read more Icelandic works, and we are still trying to get our butts to Iceland. I really want to go, but yeah, this was a beautiful book. We're going to talk about it more in a live, but I really loved it. I highly encourage you to read it. So yeah, those are the 13 books I read in January. I do have a couple books that I am carrying over into February, and I think I'm going to start telling you guys about those at the end of my wrap-ups. Since this year I'm trying to not read quite as much or be just as like obsessive about the reading. Normally I would try so hard to get all my Libby Holmes done and wrap up books before the end of the month and put that pressure on myself, and I'm not. I'm carrying books over. I don't care, and I think that's going to help me have a much more relaxing reading year, which is kind of what I'm going for. But I am sort of in the middle of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, which I'm reading along with, I think it's Dickens and Doc over on Instagram. They're doing a year-long readathon of all of Jane Austen's major works, so we'll be doing those throughout the year. I'm still reading Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley. This is a biography of Jane Austen by a really wonderful historian, and I'm really enjoying this. I think it's great. I'm hoping to finish it actually today. It's been really insightful, and I've learned, I thought I knew a lot about Jane Austen, but I didn't realize how much I didn't know. So this one's actually been it's been a really fun ride so far. Like I said, I am reading Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, and I'm also carrying over Against the Loveless World, which is our Patreon pick for January and February. I am maybe a third of the way through this, and I'm trying not to devour this quickly. This book is heartbreaking, but also compulsively readable, and because you want to know, you're just so invested in the main character. It's so heartbreaking, but I'm trying not to just devour it. I'm trying to really take my time with it. So, and then of course I am still reading Lies and Sorcery, which I will be reading, it feels like, till the end of my life, but I will get there eventually and I will finish it. I've just been reading little bits here and there. It's a big book. I'm not overly into it, but I also don't dislike it. It's a having a very complex relationship with this book where like I don't really want to pick it up, but once I do pick it up, I'm really enjoying myself when I'm reading it. It's a strange relationship I'm having with it. But at some point this year, I will finish that book. I am in no rush, as I said. So, yeah, that's everything I read in January, everything I'm carrying over into February. One other announcement, I've talked about it a couple times on community posts, and that is that I did start a second channel. One of the things I really love is sound rooms and music playlists on YouTube to put up on the screen to either relax or to read or to write or to just have ambient sort of noise or just pleasant background music to have on during the day at home. So I did create a channel where I just kind of make music to read to. It's called She Reads, music for readers, and you can use it to study, to write, to be productive, to do whatever you would like to. So I will have that linked in the description below, and I might even pin it in a comment. But if you also like to have a nice little sound room, feel free to to subscribe and to use my sound rooms if you want. I wanted to give it a try, and I'm really enjoying creating them. And yeah, I just made my first 2-hour long one, which was a bear to render and export, but I really enjoy it, and I'm having a fun time hunting down paintings of women and then pairing music with them. And so, yeah, I hope that people enjoy them. Let me know a couple of your favorite books from last month. And otherwise, thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Bye.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go come closer next to me. Trying to find another way to say this, but I think